Well, hey, and welcome to our next episode. We're in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 15 to 11, verse 1. And it's all about what table are we eating at. And we'll go through and we'll learn something from the Corinthian church about this. But before we do, let me read this bit. So 1 Corinthians 10, verse 15. I speak to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. Is not the cup of thanksgiving, for which we give thanks, a participation in the blood of Christ? And is not the bread that we break a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one loaf, we who are many are one body, for we all share the one loaf. Consider the people of God. Do not those who eat the sacrifices participate in the altar? Do I mean then that food sacrificed to an idol is anything? Or that an idol is anything? No. But the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. And what I do not want you to be is participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot have a part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons. Are we trying to arouse the Lord's jealousy? Are we stronger than he? I have the right to do anything, you say. But not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. Eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is put in front of you without raising questions of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I am referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. For why is my freedom being judged by any other's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of something I thank God for? So whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews or Greeks or the church of God, even as I try to please everyone in every way, for I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. So here we are. He's talking to reasonable people in the church. These are to people who he's planted into Corinth and who know him, and he knows that they are reasonable rather than just anyone who wants to listen. But he begins to talk about the Lord's Supper here in comparison to the feasts of the pagans or feasts to idols. And we know that Corinth is a pagan culture. They haven't all received Christ. There's sexual immorality going on in relation to food sacrifices in Corinth. And so here he's sort of setting up that you can't be partakers in the cup and the table of the Lord, the Eucharist, the Thanksgiving or communion as we like to call it, as well as being at the table with the demonic and for pagan worship. You can't do both together. And so he speaks about this cup. Is not the cup of thanksgiving for which we give thanks a participation in the blood of Christ? That cup of thanksgiving is where in the Anglican traditions and others is the word for Eucharist, giving thanks. And we give thanks as we celebrate communion for what Christ has done. His coming into the world, his dying in our place, and for which we have grace. The grace that has been afforded to us by his death and by his offering of himself in our place. And we have to participate in that. It's not just given and it's priceless. We have to say thank you and to accept the gift. There has to be an element of us receiving it and participating in it. As well as the bread that we break, the body of Christ broken for us. We have to participate in that. It's why we're baptized and we die to ourselves and are raised to life with Christ. We have to participate. And in both these things, when we come to communion, we are one because we all participate in the one death for all of us, which is Jesus Christ. The blood outpoured and the body broken. The one loaf. And so that's what it's all about. And then Paul begins to think and get us thinking about consider Israel. Consider the people in the Old Testament with the sacrificial system. That people who eat of the sacrifice had to do the sacrificing. A bloody job. A job that means burning the sacrifices that the people give, being that intermediary. And so for us, we have to do the same. We have to kind of give the people the option to come to Jesus. But also, we have to participate in the sacrifice given, the sacrifice of Christ for the people. We are, of course, a people of priests. We all get to be priests in the kingdom. And so then we sort of flit onto this idea of the food sacrifice to an idol. And this is the second part of the argument that Paul's bringing. Do the sacrifices of an idol to a Christian mean anything? The answer is no. And do the idols themselves mean anything to a Christian? And no, the answer is they don't. They mean absolute nothing. Because Christ is far beyond anything that an idol can bring. We to participate in the Lord's Supper, not in the supper of idols, or in the table or the feasts of idols. But of course, for the pagans, their sacrifice, their sacrificial system, is to the Greek gods here in Corinth, to the demonic. And for Corinthians, Paul is saying you can't have both. You can't be a Christian and still go to all the pagan sacrifices. You can't be involved in the table of the Lord and the table of pagans. You have to make the choice. And the choice given is that of Christ. You can't have both. And so there's this slogan that people in Corinth had. I have the right to do anything. Or if we sort of translate it directly from the Greek, it's everything is lawful. Everything is lawful. It doesn't matter what it is or what it isn't. You can do it. That's kind of what Corinth is built up on. But here's Paul saying, well, yeah, even though you have the right to do anything, it's not beneficial. Even though you have the right to do anything, it's not constructive. You can't build your house on it. And that should give us imagery of what Jesus talks about, the parable of the wise and foolish builder. To kind of partake in pagan feasts is building your house on the sand. But by placing your trust in Jesus is like building your house on something solid that is trustworthy. And some of that, he says, is to seek the good of others and not just yourself. To Christians, the pagan worship is nothing. It's just this thing. It's about the demonic. But actually for us Christians, it's about participating in the Lord's salvation plan for all people. So what should Christians do then? Well, what about the meat in the market? You know, it might have been sacrificed to a pagan. Well, what does that mean for us? And Paul says, it doesn't matter. Everything's from God. So go ahead, buy it and eat it. That's fine. Or if an unbeliever or a pagan invites you to a meal, and if it's something you want to go to it and eat, because eat what's put in front of you. It's an opportunity to share the gospel with them. But there's a big but in there. And the big but is if they say that this has been sacrificed to an idol, Paul says, don't have it. Don't share in that meal. Because they will think that you are condoning their behavior, that you are participating in their feast to the demons. It plays into this Corinthian nature of polytheism, or the Greek sort of culture of polytheism. You can believe in a plethora of gods. And of course, God and Jesus could just be one of the Greek gods. And the answer is no. There is one God. Being a Christian is to be monotheistic. You believe in Jesus, that he is the Lord, that he has brought redemption to the world. And so it's for their conscience, not for your conscience, that you say no. Because you're saying this isn't okay. The only way is Jesus. It's to do good rather than harm. Paul's saying here, don't cause anyone to stumble. Whether a Greek or whether the church or whether those pagans, don't cause them to stumble, but cause them to come to Christ. So that's what this passage I think is about, but we'll discuss it on a Thursday evening. So do join in for that Zoom conversation. Find out what we're doing on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, or drop us an email at info@telfordminster.org.uk to join in. Hope you'll join us then. Bye for now.